It seems Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler is cancelled. Will this ruin the Ultimate Fighter? I'm going to attempt to answer that question and review episode 4. But before I do, if you're new here, make sure you subscribe as we have brand new videos every single week. So first things first, let's address Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler. So the report seems to suggest that Conor has not entered the testing pool in time to fight on the final card of the year, meaning that Chandler versus Conor won't fight this year, but perhaps they might still be able to fight next year, or maybe not at all. But don't forget though, these are just reports. We don't know for facts yet that Conor is not in the testing pool. Just because he's not being tested doesn't mean he's not yet in the testing pool. I hope that makes sense. But will this ruin the Ultimate Fighter? Probably not, no. I don't think it's an overly interesting show as it is, but it does take some edge off it. It makes it a little bit less interesting because the whole point is we want to see these two guys fight at the end of it. But don't forget, when Conor was coaching with Uriah Faber, those guys didn't fight at the end, so it can still be interesting. So this week we have Trevor Wells versus Timur Valiev. They were meant to fight in the second week, but Trevor got a big cold sore across his face and they had to postpone the fight for next week. So Team Chandler are trying to make sure that Timur doesn't have to cut weight again, because it seems unfair that he had to cut weight the week before. But Team Conor seem insistent that they do have to cut the weight because it seems Timur is slightly bigger, at least bulky wise, so they want him to cut down to that weight, down to 135. Because don't forget, a lot of guys have big weight cuts so they can get that huge advantage, but there is some disadvantages with cutting that much weight. You're not quite yourself, you're not fully hydrated, your chin seems weaker, you've got a lot less energy, so Team Conor want that advantage, but they don't seem to quite get it. So Conor and Chandler had a bit of confrontation, deciding if it was going to be at 135 or 145. Chandler said, nope, I don't want my guy having to cut all this weight again, it's not his fault, so we'll settle at 144. Conor said no, 135, and there'll be no negotiations. But Conor wasn't there to negotiate, he sent his own team, so he didn't really have much of a leg to stand on, and Dana just decided no, it's going to be 142. We'll meet roughly somewhere in the middle. Then we move to the house where Timur and Trevor are just chatting to each other, getting to know one another. Timur was an ex-UFC fighter, and he lost his final fight to Jack Shaw. He's originally from Dagestan, and we get to meet his wife and his kids, and now they live in Thailand, and it's just nice to get to know these guys without it being some big sad sob story. And it was the same for Trevor as well. So Trevor, he was talking about his girlfriend and his dad, and how he just wants to become UFC champion, and it's just nice to get to know these guys. We don't need this melodramatic story all the time, and I'm glad they're not doing that. And then we move on to Trevor's training, and who's there but to help the team prepare is Wonderboy. It's always nice to see Wonderboy. He's a legend of the sport. He was inches away from getting the title, and it's just always fun to see him. It's actually a fight that I would love to see one day, is Wonderboy versus Conor, maybe before they retire, up in welterweight. They've both got these big wide karate stances. We could really have a fun striking match, but it'll probably never happen, unfortunately. It seems maybe Conor will never fight again, but we'll see about that. Let's move on to the actual fights. We have Timur versus Trevor, and it seemed there was a lot of pressure on Trevor to get a win because Team McGregor had already lost 3 in a row, so Trevor really needed to get this win, not just for himself but for the team. Both came out super aggressive from the get-go. Timur threw this big head kick, and he managed to get Trevor up against the fence, took him down, but Trevor stood straight back up, but Timur was holding onto him like a backpack, threatening all these submission attempts, but Trevor kept his cool, he was patient, and he got out of it, and he was causing Timur some real problems on the feet, but Timur low-blowed him, and then we had a break in the action for about 2 minutes. Trevor came back out and stuffed the takedowns with ease, and he seemed to be doing a lot better and was doing really well on the feet, and he even managed to get a takedown of himself at one point. But I feel like Timur edged that first round. He was slightly more aggressive, even though he took more damage, he had more control time, he offered the submission threats, and then both guys come out super aggressive in the second round. Trevor seemed to be deciding the pace and the controlling the octagon, but Timur got this big head kick and Trevor came down, got a takedown, but Timur got out of it almost instantly and stood straight back up. And then he got a big takedown for himself in the middle of the cage and just held on to Trevor for poor life and was just wailing on him and wailing on him. And I thought Trevor was going to panic, but he didn't. He kept his calm. Even though he was certainly losing, he managed to turn it around himself and throw down some bombs. He managed to get up on his feet, and for the last 50 seconds, they got to have a nice striking exchange for the end of the fight. But Timur was just too good and got the decision win. But so far, this has been the most exciting fight I feel we've had on the series so far. I actually really enjoyed this episode. We got a nice, fun fight at the end. We got to see Cowboy. We got to see a little bit of conflict between both the teams. It kind of had everything you wanted for The Ultimate Fighter. Do I think it's perfect? No. I'm still hoping that the show is going to get better, but I'm not really holding up much hope. But I do think that's all we've got time for. Thank you for watching. If you can like, comment and subscribe, it really does help us out.